I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, June the 3rd, brought to you in part by the National Beef Wire. That's your newest and best site to go to see everything about cattle and beef. I mean, from market news, up-to-date news, all kinds of ag news there, and it may or may not pertain to directly to cattle, but there's a lot of stuff on there, a lot of information about different products. There's real-time market information on there, including this report every day. It's probably your easiest way to find this report, but really a cool site with a jillion different channels on there. And if you're interested in cattle or beef or anything like that, just get on to nationalbeefwire.com and check it out. And also including this National Beef Wire TV that we have right here. But the charity is about done, guys, and you're thinking, what kind of charity you're talking about? Are you talking about the cattle cheese checks that everybody's signing up for? No, we haven't even started to see the first checks come out on that. But they're probably likely about through that money, and they paid out 80% initially, and just to make sure they had enough. And if they still have money, they'll come back around and start repaying the balance of that. Some people are thinking that they're going to put up more money. I don't know. That's not clear right now. Even though your big cattle organizations don't want government interference, they are out there kind of lobbying for more money. So I'm not sure how all that works. But if we did get more money, well, wouldn't it be nice to use some of that money to help some of these guys invest in some more slaughter capacity? That would be great if we could get some of that done. But I'm not talking about that kind of charity, and just as we talk about that, some of you guys have talked to me and saying, hey, the FSA wouldn't let me sign my cattle up because I had a registered hedge account or I had those cattle hedged. Can I not sign up on hedged cattle? And so I looked into that, asked the people that know, and there was some confusion on that, kind of from a statement from Farm Credit. But it was all about your grain farming and did not have to do with the cattle. So you can still sign up for cattle. Your cattle are still eligible if you had them hedged, if you had a hedge account, anything like that. If you had, if anything but a bill of sale, if you'd sold those cattle already, you couldn't. But if you had them hedged or laid off or done something like that, you can still sign those cattle up still as long as they're still in your possession. So make sure everybody's straight on that. But the charity I'm talking about, and I've never called it that before because I probably couldn't find that word, but I was on a conference call on Tuesday morning when I heard somebody that's more well-versed than me. I'd been talking about packers kind of showing good faith with these artificial bids, but charity is a better word for it. They've been coming out with these charity bids for about the last month or 6 weeks. Been paying mostly $1.20 for fat cattle when fundamentally it didn't show that they were worth much more than $1. But most all of them the last several weeks been bringing $1.15 to $1.20. Not that we're complaining about that, but whenever you're sitting there on an artificial step there and you've been getting charity bids and then your packers are coming in there and flooring the bids up there pretty good and different things like that, you know you're on shaky ground. Well, it appears that this charity case is just about over. These packers have put on a pretty good show here for a month or 6 weeks and trying to deflect some heat from the investigations that they've been getting from DOJ, and we haven't heard one peep about any of that. I have heard that they are making calls around and looking into it, but I haven't heard anything come out of the investigation. Not sure how serious and in-depth that is. Do I think anything will come out of it? No, not really. They may slap them on the hand. They may publicly put out that they were colluding or something like that. Might even give them a fine. But when you've been making millions of dollars every day per facility, you know, what kind of a fine could they put out that would bother them at all? But this charity deal is just about over. They've been putting on a pretty good show here for a while. Now these box beef cutout values have been plunging just like we knew that they would. They ran them all the way up to $4.77, $4.78 a pound on the choice cuts, and then they've been falling like a rock. as our slaughter is starting to recover here, and we're going to have something close to a normal week this week for the first time in a long time. But it's going to be surprising to me if we hold these charity bids that are higher than what the market really warrants for much longer. And we've already seen them drop this week. We had 120 predominantly the last couple of weeks as the top price. Monday we had some 118 with the board failing. On Tuesday we didn't get a whole lot more play than that, but what play we did get was a lot lower than that. And I tell you what, it's going to be hard to keep a hold of this deal. And you might want to save some of that cheese check money, because even if you didn't really need it and you didn't market anything a whole lot lower, it was just the rough times that we had and we weren't getting a fair percentage of the retail beef price, you might need that money to get through the next few months here, because it's going to be a long, hot summer. And we've got a lot of cattle backed up. We've had several reports coming out trying to deflect the fact that we're in a jam, saying that there's not that many cattle backed up. There are a lot of cattle backed up. We were going to be in a jam if we'd have had normal slaughter all the way through the spring up to now. We were still going to be in a jam. We're definitely in a jam now. You think we're not? These weights are getting up there big. This past week, our quality grading, which is due to having more feed, larger carcasses, more marbling in there, your quality grade, your choice and higher, hit an all-time record high, and that is directly against the seasonal trend. Right now is when we normally have a lot of calf feds, cattle that went on feed at lighter weights. They weren't as mature, they don't marble as well. Those cattle would be coming out right now, and normally our quality grading is in a dip and going down quite a bit. And then of course in the fall, after we have those summer grass yearlings that got a little more age to them, go on feed, whenever those cattle come out late in the fall, then they have better grading. But we've got all-time record high grading right now. If that doesn't give you an idea of how far cattle are backed up and these weights are getting big, and we just don't get that much information out of these corporate yards. They're the ones that are in the worst jam. These lots that have been selling a lot of cattle negotiated cash when they could, they've been getting along pretty good here, getting cattle moved, because your packers have come in there and been buying a lot of negotiated cash, quite a bit of negotiated grid. And because we're finding out that the formulas come back and included some dressed beef values in them, included some profit sharing from the plants in them, and those cattle were going to be quite a bit higher if they picked up those formula cattle. So those guys have been getting along pretty good, and that goes to show you that we've been holding the market, even though it was a charity deal, even though it's artificial, being said it was a negotiated trade. A lot of your sellers, those old hard-headed, stubborn guys that still sell cattle negotiated cash, they would demand the same price for their pen of cattle. They wanted the same price that the pen next to them got. And I heard a lot of stories about like that. And your packers were pretty easy to cave. And even after the fact, you know, if they found out that some cattle in a lot, in their lot down the alley from them brought 120 and they only gave them 115, about one call and 4 or 5 cuss words got them up to the 122. So we see that even though it's been a charity deal, negotiated cash trade yields you better prices. And you know, I've been pushing for mandated minimum negotiated cash trade. I mostly lobbied for the 30% minimum negotiated cash trade within 14 days. Chuck Grassley introduced the bill with some push from our Midwestern guys that are in favor of this, pushed it at 50-14. That's the bill that's out there right now. So that's what we're pushing. Whether or not it gets negotiated down at all is yet to be seen. But you guys in the Southern Plains had an opportunity to get behind the 30 and you wouldn't do it. So guess what? Now you get 50, and I think it's likely going to pass. And so especially in the Southern Plains, it's going to totally upset the apple cart, and you guys are going to have to start over from scratch by the time we do that, because I realize that 50 is not really doable. It is in the Northern Plains and in the Midwest, but not in the Southern Plains. But we're starting to see more and more folks come out and show their support. We heard from the big cattle associations, NCBA, Texas Cattle Feeders, Kansas Livestock Association, even from Farm Bureau, and there's a little bit of a shakeup in the Farm Bureau. Your National Farm Bureau organization has come out and not really against it, but not in support of minimum negotiated cash trade. But if you talk to the grassroots, the counties, the states of the Farm Bureau, they're mostly in support of it. So there's likely going to be a little bit of clash here as we start running into some of these bigger Farm Bureau meetings, because I've talked to a lot of guys that were pretty big in their local and state Farm Bureaus that are very highly supporting minimum negotiated cash trade. And then the National Association that just kind of follows in with NCBA, they scratch each other's backs whenever they have an issue that comes up that they need the other one to show support for. But, you know, there could be a little ripple in that. But we've had statements just this week. The Undersecretary Ibaugh from USDA, he has come out with a statement when asked, and it was in some different write-ups and ag publications, saying that there is merit to minimum mandated negotiated cash trade, and it would likely bring out more information because it wouldn't get covered up by confidentiality as much and things like that. So, and for somebody with a USDA stamp like that high up the ladder to say something like that, it holds some water, guys. And then if you guys haven't seen the most recent article about minimum negotiated cash trade, it was an opinion piece in the High Plains Journal written by Rick Chambers out of Hays, Kansas. They're an independent cattle feeder. And I tell you what, it was well written, well wrote up. If you guys haven't seen it, you can search for it on Facebook, or you can Google it too, and it comes up pretty fast there. It's Richard Chambers with High Plains Journal, and it's an opinion piece that comes up there. But High Plains Journal is pretty much the Bible in Kansas. And for a guy to have the stones to put that kind of an opinion piece in there and to have enough pull to get it printed, I tell you what, it carries some weight there too. I hope you guys see that and read it. It was well written. It had some data in there that you don't normally see, that we haven't used that much, about what the packers were really making through this, and what we have to do to ensure that we start getting some fair percentage of the retail beef price. And I want you guys to look that up and read it. Let's talk about your board on Tuesday, June live cattle. It showed to be kind of up and down a little bit early, and then right before the close, everything pretty much tanked. But June live cattle down the $3 limit. There goes your charity, guys. $95.30 in the spot month here in June, and our most recent established cash price was $120 late last week. How much longer are they going to do that when our spot live cattle contracts at $95.30? $20 basis, yeah. $25 basis, unlikely. And they've put a pretty good show on here for quite a while, so we're probably going to lose that. August live cattle down 277 at $96.20. Why the hell would August live cattle contracts be higher than June live cattle contracts? We know we've got a ton of cattle to get through. We were dreading August way back there in January, before we knew what coronavirus was. We thought coronavirus was that bitter beer face that you get after drinking a Corona without a lime in it. But $96.20 on August and $95.30 on June, that does not make any sense. But it'll get straightened out here. But you go on past August, and your live cattle contracts were down 42 cents to down $1.95. August feeder cattle down 270 at 133.42. I can't tell you how well these yearling feeder cattle have been selling. They've been selling really, really well for the complexion of this market and this artificial level that we've been holding up here, because I tell you what, it just doesn't look real rosy out here when we get to this long hot summer we got to go through. September feeder cattle down $2.30 at 134.90. Going out from there, down 172 to down $2.10 on your feeder cattle contracts out front. Fat cattle trade, We didn't have that much fat cattle trade. We did end up with a fairly significant trade on Monday. I'm going to talk about both of them here. Confirmed on Tuesday in Iowa, about 5,700 head through the first part of the afternoon. Already 9,500 head for the week in Iowa, negotiated cash trade. On Tuesday, 113 to 114 live and 178 dressed. On Monday, it was 115 live and 187 dressed. So you see how fast this charity deal is going away. Nebraska, 5,400 head on Tuesday. 11,600 for the week. They sold a lot of cattle on a Monday. Why do packers come out buying cattle on Monday? Because they need them. Told you that 100 times. On Tuesday, your live sales in Nebraska, 113, dress sales 176 to 178. On Monday, we had live sales all the way up to 118, and our dress sales were mostly 187, a full $10 more than what they were on Tuesday. Kansas and Texas didn't have anything on Tuesday, but Monday they did. But Monday they had 1,800 head in Kansas and 1,500 head in Texas on Monday. All those cattle at 118 and didn't get anything sold on Tuesday. So that it does not bode well. And don't say I didn't warn you. Box beef cutout values sharply lower. They've been falling. The biggest loss we'd ever seen on box beef cutout values before we started coming off of the gouging that we saw here through the worst of the pandemic was like $7 or $8, $9 was the worst drop we'd ever seen in a one-day deal. Every day now it's $15, $20, $30. On Tuesday, choice cuts down 22.42 at 318.73. Selects down 26 1/4 with select cuts now at 290.58. That's the first time we've had your select cuts below $3 a pound since April the 28th. So that's how long they held those expanded in price levels there, and then got to enjoy all that. But a little bit off on their movement, not as much as we've been seeing for the last week or 10 days, but 127 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimming is still not terrible. Your slaughter through Tuesday, 223,000 compared to 240 a year ago when everything was up and running. So not too bad. And like I said, I told you guys on the last visit, we are looking at well over 600,000 if the wheel doesn't come off sometime between now and the end of the week, and that's pretty darn close to normal. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction late on Tuesday, 128.41, down 19 cents. And like I told you on our last visit, your Monday sales had a higher trend, most likely because they didn't have a sale last week because of Memorial Day. Last week, our feeder cattle were quite a bit higher, and we saw our best prices that we've really seen all spring on your Thursday sales last week. So we're not going to see as big a gains, but we still had good sales on Tuesday. Let's look at some of them. Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, didn't have a good test of yearlings. Calves sold steady to $3 higher. They couldn't really call a trend, my buddy Dan Hill there at West Plains, because didn't have enough yearlings to really compare with the good tests he had the last few weeks. He did note on there that through May, Ozarks Regional Stockyards had receipts that were 39% higher than a year ago. So that goes to show you how light receipts were in that area early in the pandemic and early in the year, and then in May when the market started coming back and we started coming out of it a little bit, they just got flooded with cattle, and continuing to see big receipts this week too. 4,500 in West Plains there, and even though they didn't have a real good test on yearlings, look at this load here, 59 head, weighed 836 pounds in West Plains. 131, and that's in the Ozarks, guys. Now let's go the opposite end of the state, because West Plains is extreme south central. Let's go to extreme north central up there by Iowa. Unionville Livestock Market. I tell you what, Kurt and Heather Sportleader have got that sale running. I tell you what, I used to go to that sale regularly when I lived up there in North Missouri, and they are really, I mean, they just have bunches and bunches of loads of some of the best cattle you find anywhere, and getting quite a reputation for it. And they've got those Iowa and Illinois feeders coming down buying them. It's extreme top of the market there. But look at all these multiple loads in there. You look at most of those 9-weight loads. There were 7 loads of the Rock and R cattle out of Lucerne, Missouri that I talk about regularly here on the Feeder Flash. And I talked to the market reporter there, Tracy Thompson. She said $2 to $4 higher on those, but that was compared to 2 weeks ago. So like I said, last week your feeders were selling a little bit better than they were the week before, and so we're seeing higher trends there, but didn't have a sale last week. But look at this one string of the lighter ones that I saw in here. One load from the Cowan farm there, 63 head, 813 pounds, and they said they were the real deal, $134.75. How about out there at Bluegrass Stockyards at their flagship facility, the big fancy new one at Lexington, Kentucky? I told you Mary Ann Smith was going to bring in a big long string of cattle. They ended up selling the bulk of them in 2 jags. 289 head, 920 pound steers in Lexington, Kentucky, 123, and 144 head of the 812 pound steers of Mary's bring 129.25. How about some lightweight little steers over in Kingsville, Missouri? 52 head, 460 pounders at 187. That's a big price, but you don't see that many of those lightweight calves this time of year very often. But the top quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday come out of the Northern Plains, Huron, South Dakota, Huron Continental Marketing, 77 head, 688 pound steer calves bring $156.50. And that's your Feeder Flash for Wednesday.